Hey guys.
Hi.
So, as you can see, I'm not alone today. Rare, right? This is my friend Leah. Leah.
Uh-oh. Hi.
We're gonna do this for a while. So, Leah is also a soprano, like I am. She's also classically trained. She's also a member of my studio.
All true. All true things.
And she happens to be lovely. Well, today she is getting ready for a competition. And I'm going to be doing some hair and makeup magic on her. So, yeah, I thought that we would take the opportunity to answer some questions that you guys might have about singing in general and what Leah's life has been like and our shared experiences and all that kind of shit. So,
Sounds good.
All right. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to get to work. I'm going to make her talk at you for a little bit here, okay? And awesome. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your educational route in music?
Yeah. So I always liked singing, honestly. I sang from the time I was a little kid. But I didn't actually start taking any voice lessons or anything until probably high school.
Okay.
And even then, it was more just kind of singing. I think we did some musical theater stuff, things like that. But I did decide that I wanted to go to school for music. So I did an undergraduate in music education with an emphasis in choral and general music from UW Oshkosh.
Nice.
Yeah. And that was great. I did actually quite a bit of singing there.
Mm-hmm.
They had a pretty neat little music program. We did a bunch of little shows, things like that.
That's cool.
So that was cool. And then after that, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I was like, what do I do now? Because I have a degree and I still don't feel like I'm ready to actually do anything in performance for sure.
Which, wouldn't you say that's a pretty normal experience for those of us? Yeah.
I think so, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, though.
Sure,
at the time,
of course.
I was like, oh my God, everyone's going and getting jobs and doing all of these real life things, and I'm standing here like, I have no idea what to do.
Right. At the time, all of us think we're alone in it.
Right. So I went to get a master's degree because I was like, that's what people do, I think. So
sure. It's a thing to do.
I went and got a master's degree in vocal performance from UW-Madison.
Nice.
And didn't actually perform that much there, which was kind of a bummer.
Also, kind of an experience that happens a lot, I think.
Right.
People believe that they're signing up for a program that's going to give them a lot of opportunity, but maybe doesn't.
Right. So we did some classes and stuff. It's not that we didn't do anything. We did some opera workshops and things like that. But nothing in the real world, really. So, again, I graduated and went, what am I going to do?
All right.
So I ended with these degrees and was like, what do I do with these? So then I moved to Chicago.
Nice.
And kind of bounced around for a second until I found a teacher and then just started studying. And then, yeah.
Why don't you tell the folks how, first of all, what voice type you used to be?
So I am a soprano. I used to do pretty much strictly coloratura type stuff. So that's that, high melismatic, like a lot of notes kind of stuff. I think a lot of young sopranos get put into that voice category.
Yeah. Totally.
Because you look young, a lot of those characters are young characters. I mean, it can happen for multiple reasons,
Right.
So I did that for the majority of my time in Chicago. And then it wasn't until recently that I started switching to a different voice type or singing more lyric rep. And that's kind of where we are now.
So
where I am now.
What precipitated that change?
I went and started studying with new teachers, really is how it started. I was feeling like I had kind of hit a plateau with singing. I was auditioning all the time and not getting anything. And I just was frustrated. I didn't feel like I was doing the right thing. And I wasn't sure why, because I had been studying for years. And it just was going nowhere. And it's not that I wasn't doing any singing. I was, but it had not had a whole lot of movement. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just doing the same stuff. I met Vera. Well, actually, Vera and I knew each other through an opera company that we were working with here in Chicago.
That's right.
And then we met our friend Eddie through a show, and he studied with these teachers and got us to move to his teachers to see kind of what that development would be like. Right. And it was awesome. And it really changed my world
Change my world.
Change my world. But really, it's you get kind of stuck in this rut, and you don't even really realize you're in a rut,
right?
Until someone helps snap you out of it and go, maybe try something different for a little bit and see how that works.
I think that there's good reason for this. I mean, in the singing world, generally speaking, you know, there's a culture of sort of not questioning your teacher.
Right.
Sort of just, you know, when you find someone that you feel knows what they're doing and can help you, you know, you just sort of say, okay, whatever you say. But the problem is that if it's been years and you truly just aren't doing the kinds of things that you feel you should be doing, the kinds of things that you know that you're capable of, that becomes another issue.
Right. And I think it's good to also just clarify that it's not like bashing teachers, being like it's really just that you get to a point where you're not going to continue growing until you switch it up a little bit.
Yes.
You hear from someone else, you see what someone else hears in your voice, see what they can do with you. So I think switching teachers is really important, actually. Mm-hmm. Because one teacher hears one thing and works on that thing and gets you to a spot that's a great spot, but then that might be it. That might be all that you're going to gain from that.
Right.
Personal.
Right.
Experience.
And in my experience, the really good teachers know and understand that and will encourage you to do that.
Right.
To seek out other opinions.
Right.
If you feel like your teacher has just said, yeah, no, I'm it.
Right.
You know,
right.
I think that that's generally a warning sign anyway, that maybe things are not as they should be. Because, you know, if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe in the things that you are teaching, you won't be afraid of someone seeking some outside advice.
Right.
Now, I do think, I mean, we're going to have everyone hopping teachers here. I think it's important to say that, like, there are times that a teacher might say, yeah, I do think outside influence is great, but right now is not the time.
Right.
You know, when you are trying to build a new technique, when you are trying to make a big switch, or you are just not stable yet in what they're asking you to do, you don't know if you go to someone else and they have a different approach, you haven't even settled into that other approach yet. Right. So you don't know what's best, you know?
Right. Well, there's so much trust involved with your teacher, because you really, if you start going to just a bunch of random people and they tell you random things and you believe everything, I mean, it's going to really mess with you. Yeah. It's going to really mess with your head. You're not going to know where you belong, where you fit, what you should be doing. Uh-huh. So trusting your teacher is huge. Yeah. So you don't want to just go all over the place, but you do want to find people that you trust.
I think our hair is done. What do you
This looks great. This is exactly the look I was going for. This kind of
thought it would be. I know you.
I want to look as much like a little kid as I can. Yes. When I'm trying to do something very serious and professional. Yes. So I do want to say, like, I got so much from my first teacher. I mean, I really came to, and also not to downgrade going to school, but I came to Chicago from, you know, I mean, Madison's not a small town, but from growing up in smaller towns and slowly getting bigger and bigger. And I didn't know anything about singing, honestly. Mm. And so I got to Chicago and suddenly went, oh my God, there are actual singers here. Yeah. And I don't know anything. Yeah. So my first teacher really brought me a very long way. So I don't, you know, just because I moved teachers isn't that I wasn't, you know, that I'm not thankful for everything that she did for my voice.
Definitely.
But
it takes a village, though, to kind of prepare someone for, you know, a career in music.
Right.
So, you know, everyone along the way has influence. Everyone along the way has done something to add to what you are, you know, trying to accomplish.
Right. Well, and I think that, too, brings you to, like, you have to decide what it is that you want to do. Yeah. Some people sing in independent companies in Chicago, and they will do that forever, and they love that. Yep. And that's awesome. And you can do that and be totally happy and, you know, have a job that you do that makes money, and then have your opera job where you get to perform and get that love of performance out. If you don't want that, though, you have to figure out how to move on beyond that.
Right.
And really work on trying to be a professional opera singer, which is a whole different beast. Yeah. It's not the same. So that
kind of brings me to my next question for you. So for the people at home that don't know, what kinds of work can an opera singer get who maybe is not a seasoned artist yet?
So more like local stuff, you mean? Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of people sing in churches, do solo work that way, sing for weddings and blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Opera specifically, there are a ton of little independent opera companies in Chicago. So, finding those companies, auditioning for those companies, I mean, you can really be singing year round if you do that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of where a lot of people at least start. Mm-hmm. Those are not going to pay much, so it's not going to be a career.
Right.
It's going to just mostly be something you're doing for fun and because you have a love for it and you have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. And then you'll make a little money on top of that, depending on where you're singing.
Right. What is it that you want to do with singing? What kind of artist do you want to be?
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to figure that out right now. Thanks, Vera.
You are so well. I bring it up because I think that it's something that a lot of people go through. I think, in fact, every artist that doesn't just make it straight out the gate, first of all, has to take the time to say to themselves, what do I really want from this? Right. And even sometimes people who have, made it big time from a very young age, they have to reassess, because one thing about the voice is that it's not forever. And that's a very scary thing. It is. But it's also a motivator, right?
Right.
For the general public, you may not know that, voices don't really mature fully. Depends on what kind of voice you are too, but you're not really fully done until your mid-30s, and if in the case of some voice types, 40s even. Mm-hmm. So, but then you have a very small window because really, most people, unless they're a bass, let's face it, basses, I think, outlive any of us vocally.
Probably, yeah.
They are not, they stop performing professionally speaking, like big engagements and lots of roles, that kind of thing, 50s or 60s. So you don't get a ton of time.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. So what do I want to do? Was that the question? Well, this kind of goes back to when we met our friend Eddie, and you and I both started switching and moving teachers. And I was really at a point, I remember we were getting our nails done for Cendrillon, I think is what it was. Uh-huh. And I remember you being like, painted. And I remember you being like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I have come to terms with the fact that I'm never going to be a famous singer. Mm-hmm. I like singing with these small companies. I think this is probably it. I think that's what I'm going to do. And I remember you being like, really?
I mean,
I was like, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of felt like I had hit that end. And instead of realizing that I was maybe just plateauing and needed to try something new, I was like, that's it. I'm just never going to be, I'm never going to be an actual real professional singer. So now I'm kind of going through it's really scary. Like, I started studying with new teachers, and now I'm like, wow, this whole different world is opening up, and I really feel like I need to try it out. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I want to start auditioning for some bigger companies and maybe eventually do something overseas, I mean, opera, for those of you who don't know, is really big in Europe, So a lot of singers go over to Europe and do European tours and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I won't be happy unless I try that out. And I don't know if it's going to be for me. I don't know if it's something that I will be able to sustain, because I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to live that lifestyle. But I feel like I have to try it, because if I don't try it, I will never know, and I will probably always regret not trying it.
Something I don't think that people realize always is that you have to pay to audition for a lot of companies. Now, that's true mostly for the beginning. Eventually, that won't be the case, right?
Coffee break.
Caffeine. That is not true always, right? The higher up you go, the more you are invited to audition, the more, that kind of thing. But in the beginning, you have to pay for auditions.
Right.
And that can be very costly, and not just for the audition itself, but to travel to where that audition is taking place. Right? So it can be a very costly thing. And let's be honest, lessons are not cheap either.
Right.
Right?
Right.
In fact, what would you tell people is like an average cost for a professional hour-long voice lesson?
For a professional hour-long voice lesson,
Mhm.
I would say
Give them a range.
anywhere between... Do you want it like in person? Because a lot of people are doing... So an in-person professional voice lesson, I would say anywhere between, at the low end, being like $110 or $15 to, I mean, $200 probably. I don't think I've ever spent quite that much, but I think it probably just goes up and up and up.
Yeah,
as you get higher and higher, you know.
If you go to New York, you know, there are people who charge $250 to $300 an hour. So depends on where you are. Your location will make a big difference, you know.
So it's a lot.
It is a lot. It
It's
is a lot. And that's all, that's not including coachings, which are different from voice lessons. That's not including covering the cost of scores, which, you know, can be anywhere from like $30 to $100 a pop, you know.
I just bought a few scores online and I was like, oh,
I know. I know, girl.
a lot. I hope I use them.
I know. Please hire me. I spent so much money on these.
That actually brings me to roles, which I know that you're really working on right now.
Yeah.
And I'm starting, I bought some scores because I want to do it too. So it's interesting when you get to a different level of what you're trying to do, where you actually just want to learn roles. You know, you're maybe not even hired for something yet, but you just want to learn it. So finding the drive to work on your craft in that sort of level of, what am I trying to say? Level of like, detail, I guess. Yeah. Is something different that I've never experienced before, where it's like, no, just learn these roles, learn the trios and learn the duets. And, you know, I mean, we spend so much time just learning arias for an audition, but really
explain what an aria is, because not everyone knows.
So arias are the different characters usually sing a solo. So it's basically just a solo. And
at its base, an aria is just any solo taken from an opera. Right. It's not musical theater. You wouldn't call that. Any other kind of music, you wouldn't call it an aria. It's specifically opera.
Yeah. So what a lot of us do is work up arias, and usually it's like 5. So you have 5 solid arias from different languages, different operas, all that jazz, to go into auditions with.
Yep, as part of your audition package, right?
As part of your package, right. So you want to show them the types of characters that you can play, so they know what your voice type is and what they could cast you for. So that's what we do. We learn the arias to go in for auditions. But then you start getting to a point where Vera and I are both getting to now, where it's really wanting to know the whole role. So within any opera, they don't just sing arias. They're singing duets. They're singing trios. So all of the more ensemble type stuff as well. So part of thinking about getting hired for things is that sometimes people audition for things, don't get things, people hear them, and then they get a phone call being like, can you come and sing this role?
Yeah.
And you have to be ready.
Yes.
Without any preparation. You know, so it's
just go.
You have to just go. And I think about that and I'm like, that is from one of my worst nightmares. So the idea is that you do all of this prep work before. So if that phone call comes, you can go, I know this role.
Right.
I've been studying it in my own time. I've been working on it with my teachers and my coaches. So
how long does it take to learn a role?
I think that can vary too. So, I mean, ideally you want to give yourself at least a few months to learn a role.
If not more,
If not more, if you want to actually be taking lessons and coachings and whatnot, so it's not just learning the music. You know, you have to really get it in your voice and figure out the character and how it's going to work for you. And so it's a lot of work, but I mean, yeah, you want to give yourself time. So that's kind of what we're working on now.
Yeah.
Really learning roles. So we're ready.
Isn't that pretty? All right, first thing I have to say is that these are clean. So if you come after me, I'm going to come after you. Because I tried. They're just stained, all right?
I trust Farrah.
Thank you.
Wait,
are you taking this out?
Oh, yeah. I have my lip pierced. I've
Not
had it for a very long time. It's the one thing I can't part with from my childhood.
We all have our stuff.
But I do take it out for performances. You can't really see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially once there's makeup and stuff involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never been an issue for me.
Could you tell the folks about like standards in opera as far as dress and appearance? Because I think that's another thing that people don't really realize is a thing for us.
Well, it kind of depends on your level of singing, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
So smaller companies, I don't think are as particular. They're more open to, you know, colored hair and tattoos and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as going into more professional companies, I think the standards are a bit higher. And I think a lot of it is just because you're playing roles.
Yeah.
So
You have to be believable as someone to a certain extent.
You know, and a lot of the roles are set in older time periods and things like that. So if you have just outrageous tattoos and stuff, it's just not going to be believable. So, you know, generally speaking, you have to not have tattoos, but be able to cover tattoos and take out piercings, have hair that they can work with. So sometimes you wear wigs and whatnot, but if you have hair that can be done, I think
if you have hair,
I think that's a plus. Because that's really, when it comes down to it, it's competitive. So anything that, you know, will make their lives easier, if it's, you know, wow, this person looks like they could play this role, we don't have to do a whole lot of work to fix up the appearance, is good. You want to make yourself hireable. I want to say like sellable, but
yeah, well, it's true. You are sort of a product,
right?
You know, and in a nice way. How you feeling today since you're competing?
Right, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah,
my general, you know, I could poop my pants at any moment.
Yeah.
You can cut that. You can cut that if you want.
Oh no, I'm going to leave that in. No,
I think it's really interesting for people to know that people performing are always nervous, and I think anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
Yes, 100%.
Because nerves are actually good too, you know, but
they can be
it's
used for good or evil, right?
Vera and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. Before I go up to sing, I feel like I have never sung before in my entire life. And
never seen the music. Yep.
I panic. I'm worried they're going to play something I've never heard. And I don't know where that comes from. And I know that it's ridiculous, you know, so I just try to calm myself out of it.
But it's also so relatable. I think most singers experience that same panic of, crap, I don't remember the first word.
Right.
Let alone the rest of the song, you know?
So it's kind of that, where I'm like nervous, you know. I'm just not, and this is not a high stress situation. I think it's really fun. I get to sing with an orchestra today. You know, it's all going to be good stuff, but it still is nerve-wracking, you know. You want to do a good job. You want to show off your hard work and, you know.
And she's competing against actually someone that both of us have worked with before, which is exciting, and also it's one of those moments that makes you feel a little bit like, because you know, you always want to do your best. You always, of course, Leah's going in there wanting to win because that's what we want to do, right?
Right.
But at the same time, colleagues are important. You know, you don't want to be a jerk because it's head down, girl. There we go. You don't want to be a jerk because, well, first of all, that's just bad for business. Because if you're a jerk, people find out pretty quickly.
Right. Well, that's another thing with being hireable, too, is, I mean, if you're a jerk, people don't want to work with you. And that's really what it comes down to. You know, if you're easy to work with, people are going to like you. Yep. If you're not, they're going to try to not hire you if they can. But, yeah, so going into a competition is kind of a whole different thing, too. There's a different... I don't know why that's
it's all good.
But it's a different level of pressure, I think, because you want to win. You want to show that your hard work is paying off. And, I mean, it's a little different than when you've been rehearsing a role for a long time and then you can go in and sing that role.
Yeah. Like, how do you know that music is right for your voice?
This particular music?
Or, I mean, anything that you've been studying now that's...
Well, on one hand, it's easier. You know, I don't feel like I'm trying to fit a square into a circle, you know, kind of deal. It just feels more natural for my voice.
keep your eyes kind of open.
My eyes are very watery right now.
Okay, that's all right.
So I don't know. Sorry, if that's
all
gonna,
good.
all
No,
the makeup's gonna come right off.
No, you're good. I'm not working underneath yet, so you're good.
But I used to listen to more coloratura sopranos,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was singing that kind of rep as well, and be like, man, they sound like it's easy and it's flawless, and it just sounds simple for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it never felt that way for me. It always felt like I was really trying really hard to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I can't sing those high notes anymore. I still
Sure.
can. It just, now I just feel like I have a whole voice instead of just one little piece of it.
Got it.
Right. And it's great. And I love it. When my new teachers gave me a new aria, I cried because I felt like it was what my voice has been meant for all of this time, and I just never really knew it.
That's awesome.
You know, it's the stuff that I always wanted to sing that I was like, I just feel like I should be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like my voice should be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it.
That's awesome.
And from that moment, right at the beginning, I was like, yes, this is where my voice is supposed to be.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
So depending on what your Fach is, and here's the thing, people always want to know really young, like, what am I going to be?
Right.
Right? And I get that. I was the same stinking way. But the fact of the matter is you really don't know.
You don't know. And that's important to talk about. Is
Mm-hmm.
right now, I'm 35 now. So my
Mm-hmm.
voice is finally, I think, getting to the point of being developed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I wasn't a coloratura before. I was a younger singer. My voice just wasn't developed fully yet.
Yep.
And so it's not that what I was doing before was wrong. It's just that my voice was starting to move in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And it was time to accept it.
Yeah.
You know, and have someone be like, yes, you should be singing this other rep now.
Right. Open your eyes. Instead of just trying to continue with something that wasn't feeling as good, or,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um,
Well, and it's frustrating when you're doing that because I remember there's one aria that probably you guys have even heard if you look it up. It's called The Queen of the Night. I mean, it's from, you know. And I've had teachers try to get me to sing that, and it has I think it's a high F in there.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I can't sing that.
Mm-hmm.
I just, no matter what I do,
It's not
I
gonna
can't
happen.
get that pitch. And I would hear girls sing it and be like, you sound awesome. And you hit that, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just works in your voice. And I would struggle and struggle and struggle to try to do it because I wanted to sing that aria so bad.
Sure. Well, especially when your teacher. I'm sorry. I'm totally blocking the camera view. Hi, guys. Sorry. Especially when your teachers are telling you that they think you can do it.
Right.
You want to deliver.
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
none of us are sitting here going, oh, I mean, my teacher said I could do it, but you know what? Meh.
Yeah. Right. I remember being like, on a super good day, if I'm in like the best
Turn and look at me.
vocal shape and it's the perfect time of day and the weather's perfect, I can sing that
The
note.
stars align.
But that is not ever going
Mercury
to be the
is
situation.
in retrograde.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really realizing like that doesn't mean you're bad. It just
Mhm.
means that's not right for you.
Right. And I think that, you know, singers, because we aim to please and we want to do what our mentors tell us we should be doing, oftentimes that leads us to a place where we actually, like, that should be a cue that stuff isn't where your voice lies, you know?
Right. Right.
But instead we take it as a personal failing or you know, I guess I'm wrong because,
Right.
you know, they said this would work and it doesn't, you know?
Right. Well, and it's easy to compare yourself to other singers too and go,
Oh,
well, she
yeah.
can do it. So
Uh-huh.
why can't I do it? You
Mhm.
know? When really you have to stop that right away because that's all voices are different. So you can't listen to someone else and compare that to yourself and wonder why you can't do that.
Mhm.
Not that you shouldn't be listening to singers because you should, and you should
Absolutely.
take things that they're doing and go like, that's awesome. I want
Yeah.
to work toward that.
Yep, I want to try that.
That's something we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's a really scary thing to do.
It's the scariest
Mhm.
to really put yourself out there. And, you know, this kind of goes to a topic that you were talking to me about a little bit, that you'd had a discussion with some other friends about, which is that when you are singing, you can't hide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in other mediums and stuff, it's a little bit more possible, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But with the voice, especially live performance of the voice, which, again, opera is not mic'd, right? Unless you are outdoors or there are extenuating circumstances. Everything you hear on an operatic stage is by the physical power of that performer alone.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, that is a rare thing these days to experience.
Right.
Because every kind of music we listen to outside of that has some sort of electronic component, some kind of, you know, messed withness to it.
Right.
And so you are really, you know, singing your soul.
That's one of the reasons I love opera.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's totally different than everything else.
It really is.
And it is you.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if you have never been to the opera, you need to go.
Right. And really think about that. Like, that makes it totally different. There's nothing in between the audience and the performer.
Yeah.
That's it. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, not just because, you know, we do this for a living, but it...
Come to the opera.
It is the coolest.
But it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. You look ghostly white in that camera, but you don't actually.
Okay.
Just in case you were like...
Is it done?
No! You can even... Because look in the mirror yourself. For a second, we're going to add some bronzer and stuff. Mm-hmm. But
that is crazy. That looks very different.
Right? Yeah. You're like, I made a mistake. Don't smile.
Your viewers are like, what is going on?
I know. Well, they all saw that lovely video that I made of Never Enough where I look like a ghost. And called me out on my foundation for days. But it's the lighting and the camera, you dicks. Oh my God. Flashback Mary.
Yeah. Rude.
Indeed. Rude is right. So why don't we talk a little bit about preparation? And like, what is it that you do to feel best prepared for, you know, an audition or whatever you're singing for?
Well, we kind of talked about this a little bit before in that, like, we carry our instrument with us. So I kind of try to always feel like I'm in a place where I could be prepared to sing. Because when it comes to a performance, I don't like to do anything different. I like to be like, this is just how I always feel. Mm-hmm. I just feel like this every day, you know? So generally speaking, I try to stay hydrated. I drink a lot of water. I have been cutting back on my caffeine, but really,
but not today.
Caffeine isn't terrible for singers either. I mean, you get all these like, don't drink caffeine and
don't eat dairy.
Don't drink beer and don't eat dairy. And really, that's outrageous. Like, you know, yes,
you
maybe
have to live your life.
You know, don't
drink beer right before you.
Yeah, don't drink a beer and eat a bunch of ice cream right before you go on stage. But yeah, you have to live your life because it is. I mean, you are a performer, so you have to live your life like you can live your life and how you can sustain it and still be able to be successful when you're performing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just generally speaking, staying hydrated and getting a good night's sleep and things like that. Well, let's not to change the subject, but a lot of singers also have side jobs. Mm-hmm. So one of my side jobs is that I work at a bar. It's not glamorous. It's just how you make the money. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, when I'm at a bar, I'm going to be talking loud over music, things like that. So the night before a performance, I will not work. Mm-hmm. So I'm not just talking all night long. So things like that, little changes to make sure that I'm in good shape the next day. But then, I wake up and make sure I eat something, even though usually I'm queasy enough about the fact that I'm going to sing that I don't want to eat anything. This morning I made oatmeal and I gave it to Chris. Like, my stomach is not feeling like it wants to eat something, so you need to eat it. But to eat something, have water on you. You don't want to be that singer that can't get through a song without drinking water, but you do want to have it around in case you need it. And then I just warm up, which I don't know if we want to go into detail on what that means for us now, but it's a little bit less intense. Warm up and it's a little bit more open up, So just getting my voice opened up so it's just ready to do what it needs to do. But I don't want to over sing, so I won't sing a lot today before I have to
Face forward for me, actually.
Thank you. Because I think younger singers, that's something that they do wrong, that they have to learn from experience. It's like, you can't just sing a whole bunch because you have to perform. You can't go through your song 6 times.
You have to save it.
You have to save it. So a lot of the prep work comes before the performance day, you know.
Yeah, I personally, water the day of is good in moderation, but it can actually strip the folds a little bit of their natural lubricant. So I personally like to really super hydrate the day before.
Right, like the night before, for sure. Right.
Yeah, and then kind of relax on it a little bit the day of.
Well, exactly. It's like just have it. So, like, if you need it, you know, if you're feeling funky and you just need a sip of water or whatever, great. But, yeah, it's like you can't just do it all the day of and expect it to be okay. It's like you got to be hydrated and be sleeping and be healthy before the day of. Oh, I hope I don't sound stupid.
You're not
getting
gonna.
that, like...
Look at me. You're not going to sound stupid. It is not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vera's talking me down.
We
I'm
all
hitting
need it.
the moment of panic where I'm like, I don't know how to sing.
We all need it.
I like yesterday you were like, I think I'm a soccer player.
Yeah, I think I play soccer.
I don't think I've ever sang before. I think I play soccer.
I mean, you know. Tell the folks what other instruments you play.
Well, I play piano. I'm not very good at it, but I play... I shouldn't say that in case any of my students watch this, because I'm also a piano teacher. I'm fine at it. You know, I'm never going to be a classical pianist.
Well, I think the problem is that we know what, like, a really good pianist is supposed to be like.
Right.
So anything less than that seems like, I'm not very good.
Right.
We also know what it's like to be
you know,
better at singing, and so anything else comparatively.
Right. So that. I have taken more guitar lessons than probably most people, and I'm terrible at it, so I don't know what that is all about. No, for real. My boyfriend plays guitar. He plays every instrument. He's just one of those irritating musicians.
He is.
That's
He's
good at everything.
super...
But he will ask me sometimes, like, how do I play this on the guitar? I'm looking for this pitch, and I can tell you that because I understand how the guitar works. I understand chords. I understand, like, everything about it. And I just can't play it. Like, I just can't. It's very weird. I don't understand it. I can't strum. And I just feel like children can strum, and I don't know why I can't do it. But I am thinking about taking fiddle lessons.
Are you?
Yes, I think I'm going to. I think I've decided. Because I'm like, I'm going to give up on taking guitar lessons. Because it's like, I'm this person that's like, I'm going to play guitar, and I keep taking lessons. And at some point... You have to go, like, it might just be me not really, like, loving the guitar, you know? Because sometimes that's what it is. It's like, if you don't, as much as you might think that you want to play it, if you do, you'll practice, and you will get good at it. So, I'm going to switch it up. True. So, I think I'm going to try, so, in case you don't know what fiddle is actually just a violin. It's just a different style of playing violin. Played violin when I was a kid.
Oh,
and I think
yeah.
Chris also was like, I didn't know that. I'm like, really?
The hell? Holding out on us, man.
I mean, not for long. I wasn't like a prolific violinist as a kid or anything, but
that's right.
And I really liked it. So I think I'm gonna just pick it up and see if I can do it.
That's awesome.
Because it's never too late to pick up an instrument and try to learn it. You just have to practice.
That is so true. I mean, a lot of adults who come to me and say, I wish I knew how to play piano. And I really wish I'd learned when I was a kid. And I said, well, why don't you start now?
Right.
Well, I'm too old. That's not the case.
It's not the case. I had one of my students was in her 70s. And she always wanted to play. And she played when she was younger and then didn't play for a long time because work and life happened. And then she picked it back up and it made her really happy, you know?
I too have had students of all ages. I mean, really, in all levels, really. You know, some people started playing piano as kids and hung on to a lot of it. And some people, are starting from the very, very, very beginning in their 70s. And that's okay.
Right. It's actually really good for you. I mean,
it is. I mean, the effects on the brain
right.
That practicing a musical instrument has are unlike anything else. Like, truly, unlike any other experience you could have. Makes both sides of the brain work together, and that's what makes it so unique. And that's why music used to be a huge thing in schools until we ruined it.
Yeah. As a performing musician, where I'm trying to do this as a profession, it really becomes a job. And it's not that I don't still love doing it. I totally love doing it. That's why I do it. But it doesn't have the same type of outlet and freedom that playing music does for people. So one of my biggest struggles, I would say, in trying to really make this work as a career has been losing that. I feel like I'm losing an outlet for music that I used to always have through singing that now I can't get through singing anymore. So I think that's one of the reasons that I'm like, I want to pick up fiddle. I need something that I don't have the same pressure to be really good at. You know, I can just do it because I love it and don't have to worry about it, you know.
That's why I draw, because otherwise it's another creative outlet. Right. But I mean, I do have some expectation. My dad's an artist, so I do feel pressure to be good at it. Just to be like, I inherited some of you, right?
It's not that you don't that you have to be bad at it to have it be an outlet. It's like you're not trying to make a profession out of it.
Exactly, because that's a very different thing, and that's like people that talk about possibly wanting to go into this as a profession. That's the first thing I talk about. I say to them that, well, that's great, and I'm glad that you love it so much, but know that that love will change to a certain extent. Right. It has to, in order to become something that you do for money. Right. Right. It takes away something. It also, you gain something from it too, so it's not to say that it's all bad, you know? Right. But
it's different. It changes it for you.
Yep. It's not going to be what you used to have, you know, with music.
Well, it's easy to kind of get wrapped up in it when you're in school and you're like, I'm a musician and this is cool and, you know, I have a talent and whatever. And then it becomes like I have to work really hard at this thing if I'm going to try to make it a profession because it is a job, you know. It's a fun job, but it's still a job.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I think people don't realize so much of, because you see, you know, by the time you go to a performance, you see everyone cooperating as a group, right? The orchestra, the singers, everyone's together on stage creating this beautiful thing. But what you don't realize, or at least just don't think about perhaps, is that all of that was prepared for by themselves. Like, being a musician and being good is actually, again, sort of a solitary thing. Right. Because you're not going to be, you know, you don't start out learning an opera as a group.
Right. Okay. Right. Oftentimes the rehearsal process is actually really short. So you do all of that work on your own.
Yep. And that takes some personal, you know, fortitude to keep working so hard. And especially, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, you and I are starting to learn roles as a whole because we want to be prepared, but we also don't actually have that thing to be prepared for yet. Right. So it's this weird mind game where you have to sort of learn to work towards something that you don't even know is there yet, you know?
That's where I am right now. I'm like, I have the scores and they're sitting on my piano and on my music stand, and it's really hard for me to crack them open. Yeah. And it's like, where do you start? Yep. What do you look at? How do you learn this when it's not a deadline and there's not a rehearsal schedule and there's not you're going to be on stage in front of people, so you better learn this. Yeah. You know?
You have to have your own, you know, momentum, sort of. And don't get me wrong, that's not a reason to say, oh, well, that's not meant for me if you don't have that right off the bat. I think that's something that you have to learn. Right. I don't think most people have that. Right. You know, all on their own in a vacuum, you know, like you that's something you develop.
Right. And I think finding things that inspire you, you know, if it's listening to a singer that's really great and finding inspiration from that and then being able to learn a role after that, you know, or open up your score and actually start working on it, then that's what you have to do.
Speaking of, who do you like to listen to?
Well, who I listen to has changed drastically.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of my favorite singers is Leontine Price.
Oh, I love Leontine.
She's so good.
She's
She's
so good.
I actually find it hard to not listen to her. Like when I'm looking at something, she's just one of the singers that I always want to listen to. And Netrebko is another one for me.
Anna Netrebko is a fantastic voice, people. So look her up.
She's another one that I have a hard time listening to anybody else. In working with new teachers, I found an interest in singers that I hadn't really paid attention to before. I think just because I didn't know, you know. But I also remember listening to Netrebko before and being kind of confused.
Yeah, me too.
And it wasn't that I was ever like, it's bad. I was just kind of confused because it's very different.
It is.
Than a lot of singers that...
Oh, you're transferring.
Sorry, I know this because my eyes just went like
No,
crazy.
it's all good. That's not fun.
But I think it was kind of overwhelming.
Uh-huh. Well, and her sound, I think, doesn't translate to recording the way that other kinds of voices do.
Right.
Like, there is something to be said for, like, bigger voices, and her voice is big.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The acoustics that they're managing to make that sound, I think, don't always translate to the recording situation as well as smaller voices.
Right. Well, that's another interesting thing about opera. It's like, it is not meant to go through these mediums.
Yeah.
You know? So to be able to record that sound and have it really relay what they sound like in a live situation is hard.
Thank you so much, Leah, for talking with us today.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something and maybe enjoyed our rambling. Okay.
Bye.
Like and subscribe. Bye.